Oh, look, the light rays coming through. Hopefully you guys can now see that stuff out there, those beautiful light rays over the island. Yeah, I think that's it for the light rays. I'm never shooting with these Sony cameras ever again, at least for when it comes to seascapes. Now, as a landscape and outdoor photographer, I rarely ever shoot in situations that are very electronic friendly. It's usually situations like this where we have crashing waves, it's blistering cold, it's rainy, it's spraying with waterfall spray. And if you've been following this channel for a little while now, you will know that back on our May trip, we went to Yosemite and we were chasing waterfalls and I was rushing around, but I ended up breaking the Sony Alpha 1's LCD screen. So after that, I decided to kind of downgrade my gear. I did buy a replacement Alpha 1, but I decided to downgrade the rest of my gear just in case something similar were to happen to either my time-lapse camera or my vlog camera. And at that time, I made a vow to myself, I will reserve to use the Sony Alpha 1 primarily for things like astro and wildlife where I need the speed, but for other sketchy situations like seascape photography or waterfall photography where there's a bigger risk of losing the camera, I would use something cheaper, smaller, and more replaceable like this camera right here, the Sony A7C Mark II. Before I get into the rest of the story, the light looks like it's about to open up again, so let me go find a different composition a little bit further down the beach. These guys already ditched me over here. How rude. But hey, for good reason. We got nice textures in these clouds. Darwin's already getting a shot with the island. You got this beautiful little rock here in the foreground. I don't know if you guys can see that there. You guys can see it a little bit better. But I like the way that the water just kind of curls up and kind of flows into it and around it. So I've got that water flow action going and then leading up directly to where the island is and where all the nice clouds are. But anyways, this A7C right here was supposed to be kind of like my throw-around camera where I would use it in sketchier situations like for seascapes and for waterfalls. And you know, in case I dropped it again or did something stupid like that again, it'd be very easier to replace than an Alpha 1. I took this camera out on its first initial seascape shoot. Of course, I didn't film a vlog of it. I should have filmed a vlog of it because it was a beautiful, beautiful sunset. It got hit by a wave from this side, of course, the side with all of the ports. And even though the hot shoe cover was still in, the dreaded Sony error message came up and completely ruined my mood because it was literally the first wave that it took that gave me that stupid error message. So I obviously was pissed and didn't want to film anything at that time. I even went back out with it the next day and it was still giving me the error message. So I let the camera rest for a little while. I gave it maybe like a couple more days just to kind of air out and dry out that hot shoe, and the error message has since gone away. And my solution at the moment for the problem to prevent the error message from coming up again is this right here, to put a whole bunch of duct tape or electrical tape at this point on the hot shoe. That's only a temporary fix though. It's only a matter of time where I pull this guy out to take some video, put the mic on it, yada, 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 and then we're screwed because we've got an exposed hot shoe again. And because that error message literally came up so fast, it really got me thinking, I probably should try a different brand for a camera to use in specific situations like this where there's crashing waves. The hot shoe is bound to get wet regardless of whether or not you've got a hot shoe cover on. And a camera brand that won't give me that stupid error message over and over again. Now I do believe that the bigger full frame camera bodies from Sony are a little bit more weather sealed because I shot with the A1 for a while and The A1 didn't die because of water or saltwater corrosion. It died literally because I was careless and dropped it on the ground. But regardless of whether or not you shoot on these smaller full-frame Sony bodies or the bigger full-frame Sony bodies, if you expose that hot shoot to any sort of moisture, you're pretty much bound to get that error. So that got me thinking and wondering, what else could be out there that I could use for seascape photography? So I think I found a solution to my problem, and we'll get into more details in this video. But here are a few of my requirements that I want out of this camera. I don't want to abandon the Sony ecosystem entirely because I still really love my Alpha 1 and I still really love my Z7ii one for vlogging. Even though I'm not vlogging with it right now, there's still no other camera out there that performs as good in low light as the 12 megapixel sensor that the Z7ii one has. Plus, I really love all of Sony's super small, ultra lightweight and compact full frame lenses. But in this case, for this scene, the clouds are looking so epic. I'm gonna switch to the 14mm. I just need a body that does a little bit better in harsh weather conditions. Check out this sky. This sky looks so epic. It's like subtle, but we like the subtle epicness. Ooh, look at these waves. Now the friends that I always shoot with here, like Darwin and Lummy and Garrett, they all shoot with Canon. And I have to say, Canon probably has the best weather sealing out of all of the camera brands. This guy has dropped his Canon R5 and a 14 to 35mm lens into the drains, got it totally submerged. When he took it out, there was only an issue with the lens, but the camera worked totally fine. He sent in the lens and got it repaired for free. So I would love to switch to Canon for the weather sealing, customer service, but again, I'm trying to save on size and weight. Canon bodies and Canon lenses are so much more heavier than Sony bodies and Sony lenses. They don't really have those small, lightweight prime lenses that I need for astrophotography and landscape photography as well. In addition to that, there's no way to adapt my Sony lenses onto Canon RF camera bodies, which is unfortunate. They should probably do something about that, because then I would switch to Canon in a heartbeat. Desperate to find a solution before my next trip, I scoured the internet and came across the Nikon Z system. And while they don't officially adapt their bodies to Sony glass, there are a couple of third-party options that make adapting Sony glass to Nikon Z bodies pretty seamless, at least according to the advertisement. So I reached out to the only person that I know that shoots Nikon, Walt.
What is this blasphemous?
Yeah, what is going on here? I could swear this thing says Sony on here. But what the hell is it doing on a Nikon?
Blasphemy!
That's the crazy part.
Baby.
That's the crazy part.
Ooh, look at that! So sick! Damn!
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh yeah, that's some B-roll, baby.
After playing with his Sony to Nikon adapter on his Z7 Mark II, my gear acquisition syndrome kicked in. I purchased one for myself and took it to the Big Island to test it out for seascape photography. No sleeping here. Airbnb tour. Pretty nice find, Lummy.
Nice. And it was cheap.
Not like the San Francisco one. Look, this bathroom's floor is all intact. Oh yeah. Enter this guy, the Nikon Z7 Mark II. And this camera hopefully will be my solution to my Seascapes problem. It's a 45 megapixel sensor, very similar to my Sony Alpha 1. The autofocus is not going to be nearly as good as the Alpha 1, but again, I'm not trying to look for something to replace the Alpha 1, I'm looking for something to use instead of the Alpha 1 in these crazy sketchy situations where we've got salt water flowing everywhere, where we could possibly lose this camera. I picked up this camera for about $2,000 used, and it's approximately the same price that I paid for the A7C Mark II. So even though the footprint is a little bit bigger, if I were to lose this camera, it wouldn't be that much big of a deal. It would be kind of a similar loss. In addition to that, I'm hoping that the bigger and more robust body will hopefully make it more weather sealed for situations like this, and just perform better in these type of situations. We've got this beautiful sunset unfolding behind us. Hopefully we'll be able to get some good shots. This would be my first official shoot with the new Nikon Z7 Mark II. I'll get into the pros and cons of this camera in a minute, but hopefully we'll get splashed by a couple waves so we can really test out the weather sealing of this machine. In terms of the Z7 Mark II, some of the things I like about just the body itself is that it feels like an actual camera. It's a much more satisfying experience to kind of handhold and manipulate the camera. I always felt with shooting with the smaller Sony bodies, as well as even the regular size full frame Sony bodies, that the grip just wasn't as robust as Canon or Nikon. So having a camera that actually feels like a real camera in my hands, it's a satisfying experience. Another thing that I liked about the Z7 Mark II as opposed to the Z7 Mark I is the fact that we've now got a regular SD card slot and dual card slots for the camera. As you can see, I don't have a CF Express Type A card because right now I'm still kind of testing out this camera. I'm not sure if I'm going to fully commit to purchasing this. I still have a few more days to return it, so I may return it as long as I don't destroy this thing in the process. But the fact that it can shoot redundant is a big plus over the original Z7 Mark I. And despite the fact that this body is bigger and more robust, it still is a relatively small and compact mirrorless camera, that it's not as bulky as bigger DSLRs or even the bigger mirrorless cameras from Nikon, like the Z8 and the Z9. It's still relatively compact and lightweight and portable, that when I replaced the A7C Mark II with this camera in the bag, I didn't notice that big of a difference in overall weight of the camera bag. I still feel like I'm able to pretty easily lug this thing around with my 3 cameras, 3 tripods, and all of these lenses here. All right, let me try to see if I can get set up with a shot here in this sketchy situation. Are we all going right up against it? I guess we're all going right up against it. Here we go, guys. The stupid stuff that we do. Oh yeah, that was a nice wave. Almost took this tripod out. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Heads up. Hold on to all your tripods here, guys. One more big one. Come on, Ocean, test the weather sealing of this Nikon here. Woo! Beautiful. This is a small wave, but you can kind of get a taste of what we're shooting. Some decent clouds. So I already touched on some of the features about the Z7 Mark II that I do like. Some of the things that I don't like is that these 2 card slots over here, let me just get in focus. One is a regular SD card and the other is a CF Express card. So having 2 cards of 2 different speeds can sometimes make writing redundant a little bit silly because you're always limited by the slower card. But if I'm planning on just using this camera for seascapes and sketchy situations, I'm not really going to be using it for any wildlife photography. I think just shooting with that slower SD card is probably going to be fine. Another thing that I don't like is that unlike the A7C Mark II, which had the tilty and flippy screen, this guy only has the standard just tilt one-way screen. So if I'm shooting vertical, I won't be able to tilt it up. I kind of have to bend down and look at the camera this way, which is not that huge of a deal, but it is something that I miss about the A7C Mark II. And the other thing that I kind of already touched on already, the overall footprint of this camera is kind of big, so I had to give it its own dedicated space, but I'll take a little bit bigger of a footprint if it means better weather sealing, especially for situations like this. And one of the things that really sold me about this camera is that I have a friend that actually shot with the Z7 Mark II for a while, Walt, but he exclusively shoots now with Nikon. And even though his Nikon has been through the ringer, when I tested it out, it had a lot of like sticky buttons and card slots that weren't exactly working as they should be. There was no dreaded hot shoe error that came up like how Sony's does. So big plus if there is no such error that exists on Nikon. Yeah, there's really nice. Oh, hello. Test the weather sealing, please. Nothing crazy. Just crazy flows. Hell yeah. A little bit moisture right there. Nothing bad, nothing too crazy. So this whole past minute or so, I'm looking at this clip. It's been like wave after wave, crazy shooting. I'm pretty much just holding down my shutter button on the Nikon. And I'm only shooting with a regular V90 UHS-2 SD card, which is a fast SD card. But I'm surprised I'm not hitting the buffer even with these big files. Okay, only now I'm starting to hit the buffer with the Z7 Mark II. And I just let my finger off the trigger for just a little bit and then let the camera reset. But really, if I'm just gonna be shooting seascapes, I'm shooting at 1/5 of a second, f11, just firing away at it full burst mode, I don't think I should run into any issues. I don't think I'm probably gonna need to get a regular CF Express card for this camera. So as the sun sets, with this last little bit of light, I just wanted to touch on one more thing for this sunset, and then we'll test it more with the next sunsets that we're gonna come up with. As some of you keen-eye viewers have noticed, this is actually not even a Nikon lens. This is a Sony lens, and it's adapted with the newer adapter. And so far, this is just my first shoot. Obviously, it's gonna perform a lot worse than native Nikon glass. I've already had the focus miss a couple times, even with a static scene like this. It's not that great for fast-moving subjects. But I figure if I'm just gonna be using this for time lapses and for seascapes, I can usually rely on the autofocus, and if the autofocus does miss, then I can just, have the camera refocus itself, or if it's really struggling in some really harsh lighting conditions, I probably could just throw it into manual focus mode and still get some pretty solid results. But yeah, this way I can literally just change out the camera body, the A7C Mark II, which failed in these situations, to a more robust camera like this, and also not have to change out any of my lenses in the process, which is great because I really like this this lens, the Sony 16-35 power zoom. It's really small, lightweight, compact, and portable, and it's an all internal zoom. So when you're shooting seascapes like this, there's no risk of any salt water going inside the lens because everything is internal. So I really enjoy using this lens for seascapes. I just really needed a body that didn't give that stupid Sony error message. And I don't know, looks like problem is kind of solved somewhat.
The following day, after shooting some astrophotography, we grabbed breakfast at Ken's and also grabbed a few shots of the Pueo. Regrettably, I should have tested the Nikon for this too, but like I said before, my A1 will be reserved for when the autofocus and speed are needed for scenes like this. We then return to the drains in hopes of getting more reps in with the Nikon.
Come here.
Alright guys, here we are again back out here at the drains. But check out this sky behind me right now. Hopefully you guys can make out, but we've got a lot of potential, beautiful thick clouds above us, and a nice clear sky right underneath. We're just kind of scouting out a couple of compositions, and this is like a seascape tip, not just for, to test out the Nikon and versus Sony and yada yada yada, but a seascape tip that's pretty applicable to any situation. And I learned this tip from the seascape master himself, which is use your iPhone to scout out your composition. Because with the iPhone, you can kind of frame things up here. The 0.5 is like a super ultra wide angle lens, like a 13-14 millimeter. The 1-point composition is like a 24 millimeter. So you kind of frame things up, frame it just how you like it, and see how your composition is going to look like for your shot this evening. So I'm thinking something like this. Once we get a little bit closer, I think that's going to be the shot that we go for. This is what I get for hanging out with all these Canon shooters. They just be trying to smoke out the Sony cameras. Unbelievable, unbelievable. All right, so here's the dilemma that I'm having. This is such a beautiful sky that I really want to take a time lapse in addition to taking still images, but I don't want to leave the A1, my most expensive camera, like all alone on a time lapse. So I think I'm gonna time lapse with the Z7 Mark II and see how that goes. And hopefully, you know, if something were to happen to that camera on a tripod, hopefully nothing will happen. But if something does, it's less expensive of a loss than for if I lost the Alpha 1s. All right, well, let's hope this guy goes. Got a time lapse going on. We also got some rain coming in that direction, so I guess we'll also be able to test the weather sealing if we get attacked by that rain. It's really gonna test the weather sealing of this Nikon here. But hopefully we get a nice time lapse out of this guy here. All right, game plan is we're waiting for the rainbow. Looks like there's a little bit of something developing behind us right here. We're just waiting for the sun to pop out behind these clouds here. But then our plan is to run alongside this cliff of the drain and shoot back this way towards the rainbow. It's gonna be a sketchy situation. I'm not sure how much I'm actually gonna be able to film. Never mind, screw it. We retrieved the Nikon, left the A1 down there, essentially taking the same time lapse, but this rainbow is about to come out any minute, so I figured I'd make this decision because yeah, what we're doing with this camera is really, really sketchy. And I think I take my chances leaving the Sony in a dry area by itself, just getting rained on, than risk my Sony into that situation. Because the more I stood there, the more I realized this over here, what we're doing on this side with the drain and the rainbow, is a sketchier shot to take than the time lapse. So we're gonna, of course, use the less expensive camera to take the risk for us. All right, guys, we got some craziness going on right now. There's part of a rainbow going on back there. And then all the way on the other side, we've got a part of a rainbow kicking off all the way on that side. It kind of went away at this point, but we got the Nikon. Seems to be doing okay, but I did a foolish thing. I was shooting with the 20mm, and when that full rainbow was out, it was definitely not wide enough. So I decided to just switch over to the 14mm. So I totally just changed it in the middle of this ocean. But yeah, we gotta get shooting, but here's the evidence. This is not photoshopped, guys. This is just that beautiful. Big waves. Woo-hoo. Let's film it this way. Full fucking rainbow. There's the top part. Woo, all the way around to the other side. Just doing like 3-shot panoramas with the 14mm, but man, we are getting some incredible conditions on this trip.
I have to admit, I have a major gas problem, and I'm probably the worst person to be afflicted with this photographer disease, as I once again destroyed another camera, this time my brand new vlogging kit. A brand new DJI Osmo Pocket 3 went for a swim at the drains. At least I was able to retrieve it and use DJI Care Refresh services, thank God. But that's why there isn't any B-roll for the next few shots as I circled the drain.
Like the idiot that I am, I dropped my vlog camera, the Pocket 3, into the water, and now it's not working. So now we're just recording with the mic and the iPhone. But look at this incredible sunset. We had some beautiful colors in the sky, beautiful rainbow action, and now we're just getting some beautiful colors in the sky right now. It's absolutely beautiful.
Despite my dumbass continuing the tradition of losing one camera per trip, this sunset had to have been one of the best I've seen from this area. Would it be possible to get one more? Well, after another Milky Way mission and recovery, we had one more chance at sunset here in Kona.
Whoa! Look at the sky too.
Got some good wave action here today. So we've been testing out the Nikon Z7 Mark II for seascape photography over the past couple of days. And here are some of the things that I found about this camera when paired with this guy here, the little newer adapter on the inside for Sony E-mount lenses. In terms of image quality and sharpness, this combination with Sony lenses on Nikon bodies actually produces some pretty good results, especially for seascape photography. When you're shooting at apertures like f8 up to f16, it's really hard to see that you are using a lens that isn't officially supported by Nikon. And also having that base ISO of ISO 64 means that I sometimes don't even need to use a 3-stop anti-filter when shooting directly into the sun. So that added stop of light during really high dynamic range scenes is really helpful, especially for seascape photography. However, when it came to autofocus, I definitely would not use this type of combination for anything that was really critical for autofocus, like wildlife and moving subjects. Even with a relatively static scene like seascape photography, sometimes the autofocus would miss. In those situations, I would have to pick a different autofocus point to make it a little bit easier for the camera to focus on a particular subject. And if that didn't work, I would end up having to manually focus with the lens itself, which is, again, not that huge of a deal because we're primarily going to be using this guy for landscapes and seascape photography. But there is one more thing that I still have to test, which is the weather sealing and the weatherproofing of this camera. Now, we've been shooting the drains over the past couple of days and this camera has gotten splashed a couple times, but nothing super crazy where I would think that it would be really testing the weather sealing. But we scouted out this location a little bit before sunset, so I'm going to try and see if I can grab a shot at a composition further down that way that I think will actually test the weather sealing of this Nikon. Before we head down and test this shot that I have for the weather sealing, we're gonna try and shoot this drain because the tide is dropping, so I don't know how much flow we're gonna get by the time the sun actually sets. So I'm gonna try and grab a quick shot from this drain, hopefully when the waves are a little bit bigger. Alright, well, Darwin's still hoping for the drain shot. Garrett's gone off to something different. I've also gone off to something different. This sky looks really nice, so I got to set up a time lapse with the Alpha 1. We got the 14mm G.A.S, just shooting this little rock formation. We've got beautiful reflections all around, so it should capture the sky nicely. I'm gonna head over to our little splash spot over there, test the weather sealing on the Nikon, see if we can get splashed a couple times. But I'm gonna switch out the video camera. I don't think that this video camera is gonna be equipped enough to film us with this horrendous endeavor. So I'm gonna switch to the iPhone, see if we can get some fancy vlogging footage that way. So this is what I mean when I say we're gonna go in the splash zone here. So I wanna shoot that cascade, but there's all these waves that are coming in, so we wanna try and get maybe a little bit of cascade action going on here, cascade there, and then ultimately there's the sunset. I'm gonna try to see if we can capture this shot here a little bit earlier, and then kind of towards the rest of the evening, I'm gonna head back towards where Darwin is and maybe shoot the drain from a different angle. But yeah, pretty consistent water flow there, but we are definitely gonna get splashed by these waves on this side. Well, if this wave doesn't test the weather sealing, I don't know what will. Woo! This is crazy. Got a lot of wave action, but I think the camera stayed mostly dry. I gotta do this for you guys. Woohoo! Oh my God. Garrett ran away. The Canon shooter ran away.
Hey, the tripod can't handle it.
Blame it on the tripod. I'm really trying to get this thing wet for you guys, but the waves are just not doing it for me. We got a little splash here. Oh man, this is nuts though. Nice little composition, nice little water flow there. Nothing too crazy. All right guys, this is very much uncalled for. We are literally right on the edge. The water should at least hit the camera at least a little bit more. We've got a little bit of moisture here. I want to get the camera hit this way to see if it affects the hot shoe. I don't know. I'm thinking it's probably going to be fine. It's probably going to take more than just these small little waves to really do some damage to the Nikon. I just want to see if there's any error message that pops up. How about this way maybe? Woo! Oh my God, it's almost going to get submerged by that backwash. I think that's got to be good enough, right? That's got to be a good enough test. Holy smokes. Woo! Whoa, it's really close. All right, so the lens definitely took a beating. The body, not so much. But yeah, we're finishing up over there. I'm just letting Garrett take that shot. We're walking back over towards the big drain. Just try to see if we can end this sunset off once the sky really starts to light up. I definitely want to try and capture something in that drain and hopefully get a good shot that way. But yeah, weather sealing so far, just not the most extensive weather sealing test. I didn't get this camera soaked, but a few splashes from salt water here and there over the past couple of days. It's held up pretty good so far. Ah, shucks, I didn't even film it, but we got one big wave as we got back over here. We just set up a composition just in time. But instead of trying to get a shot of like this whole drain, I'm just focusing on the side that's getting kind of like the most flow. So at least if there's like a half good wave, we might be able to catch something when the light is good. But yeah, we got a nice one just a little bit earlier. We'll put it on the screen now. But we're starting to get some light rays. The sun should be popping out below these clouds pretty soon. Hopefully we get some good color. Oh, here we go, here we go, here we go. Oh yeah. Woohoo, look at that. That's nice. Hopefully we get it while this sky is at its best. I'm gonna try my best not to move my camera just in case the sky doesn't work out. Hopefully we can blend it, but don't tell anybody, Kay, that I'm gonna blend this shot with a nice sky. All right, so in conclusion, this Nikon Z7 Mark II might be the best Sony camera for seascape photography. Just for the fact that if you get splashed by some sort of water, like salt water or waterfall spray and whatnot, you're not going to get that stupid error message. So if you are a landscape photographer shooting Sony and you have a lot of Sony glass, maybe start looking into the Nikon bodies. Just based on my experience breaking so many Sony cameras in the past, this Nikon just seems so much more rugged and durable. And with this newer adapter, as long as you're not shooting something that requires really fast autofocus like wildlife or people, I would say that this newer adapter really does perform well for like these situations when you're shooting landscape photography. The sharpness and image quality are great. The only problem that I do have is that it's just a little bit iffy while using autofocus. So you can just throw the camera into manual mode, focus on your scene, and just fire away with your camera. This camera is a little bit bigger, bulkier, and heavier than some of like the smaller full-frame Sony mirrorless bodies. So if you are somebody who really likes to keep things small and lightweight and loves those compact full-frame cameras from Sony, yeah, this probably isn't the best for you. But like I said earlier on in this video, those smaller camera bodies seem to have worse weather sealing, especially if you're shooting around a lot of seascapes or around a lot of moisture. I wouldn't necessarily trust those cameras to perform at its best. I'm still going to keep the A7C Mark II just in case I need something really small, lightweight, and portable to, let's say, take on hikes or to take on non-seascape travel photography. I still think that that camera is going to perform just as good as this Nikon. But for serious landscape photography missions, especially if I'm going to be shooting around a lot of water, I'm definitely going to be reaching for this Nikon more than any of my other Sony cameras. Oh man, check out this sky. The sun just popped its head out. I just adjusted my composition ever so slightly. Darwin and Garrett them have moved compositions because they really want to try and get something different. But I think if we are able to get one more big wave with this beautiful sky behind us right now, I think that's gonna make for a really, really nice photo here at this big drain to end this seascape video off. Probably have about 5 minutes for this wave to happen with this sun star. Hopefully it does. I'm getting some small waves, but nothing too major. I think what I'm gonna do is, instead of trying to focus on getting the cascades, I'm gonna move this camera a little bit back and literally just focus on the water swirling inside of this drain here. I'm gonna come back to kind of where Darwin was shooting and just see if I can capture the action of the drain itself and the water motion, because I'm really not getting any water flow cascading down the sides here. But yeah, this sky is probably at its best right now. So I'm just gonna see if I can grab one more shot here. Well, I think that's going to be about it for this beautiful sunset. But for seascape photography, I think this Nikon Z7 Mark II performed extremely well. In next week's video, we'll test the Nikon Z7 Mark II for astrophotography, and that'll really determine whether or not I can actually replace the A7C Mark II with the Nikon Z7 Mark II for serious landscape photography missions as my kind of throw around camera. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like this type of content, this travel, vacation, and a little bit of education, make sure you hit that like button, comment below, and subscribe if you aren't already. We'll see you guys next week for some astrophotography. Peace out.